Hello, and welcome to the Sacred Heart Shaman podcast, where we talk about spiritual healing, shamanic wisdom, and the challenges of walking the healer's path. My name is Nadia Harenkiu, and today is episode number 45, How to Heal Through Travel. Good morning, podcast friends. Thank you for joining me this morning. If it is morning for you, it is for me. Before we jump into the podcast topic, I want to promote myself a little bit. I know I don't do that very often, but I'm going to do it today. If you guys don't know, I have a meetup group where I host some free and donation-based community healing. I do have a couple events coming up that I would love to share. I have a past life regression event coming up this weekend, and then a soul retrieval event that is 3 parts. All of these will be virtual through Meetup. You can find a link as well on the sacredheartshaman.com website. Additionally, I have opened the doors to applications for my shamanic immersion program that begins in October of this year. It is my first time doing a hybrid program, so we will start off the container in person and we will end the container in person, and it'll be 7 months of basically shamanic training and mentorship, if that's what you want to call it, teaching you how to walk between the worlds. So I have a couple spaces left for that. Again, it starts in October. The cutoff is the second week in September or when the group fills up. I have about, I think it's halfway full as of right now. If you're interested in joining us on that group, head over to the website and fill out an interest application, sacredheartshaman.com, in the shamanic training page. We'll have a conversation, see if it's a good fit, and go from there. Okay, to get into today's topic, we are talking about travel. In case you don't know this about me, it is one of my favorite topics. And I know I have talked about this before, but it doesn't matter. We're going to talk about it in a different way. And I do have a podcast coming up in the next few weeks that I'm recording with my best friend Rebecca about our trip to Rome. So it's going to give you a more firsthand look at what this kind of travel experience looks like before, during, and after. That's going to be a really fun, long podcast that will also have a video version I'll throw up on YouTube for those of you who want to watch the experience. So today we're going to talk about healing through travel. Now, what does that mean? So we all have geographical locations that we're called to visit. They may be a bucket list item for you or something you've dreamt about since you were a child, or maybe just a place that makes your heart swell when you think about it. It may even be just whispers of intrigue or knowing that your family is from this part of the world. Now, some location callings are stronger than others, and sometimes our life is just so full that we don't even consider the potential of traveling to these places that we dream about or that whisper in our ear. Our dream to travel quickly fades into the background, making way for more practical things like work and family. But it is an important thing to revisit from time to time. So today, we're going to be talking about travel as a healing experience. Now, as I said, I've brushed on this topic a few times in my podcasts, but I want to talk about it more from a broad perspective than a personal experience perspective, and some things that I want to address head on. So, first and foremost, when we're called to a place, there is a reason. Unless we're talking about something pretty superficial, like thinking it'll look good on our Instagram feed, there's always something deeper here for us when we have that pull to a geographical location. And it's not for us to know what that deeper thing is, but it is for us to answer that call. And this is part of being on a healing path. This is certainly part of the shamanic path. And it's part of being human, as well as learning how to listen to your intuition, because the spirit world does largely speak in whispers, despite what a lot of people talk about, especially early on in the spiritual path. It's going to be nudges and intuitions and whispers. And did I hear that right? Is that actually happening? That's kind of how you know that it's spirit talking to you. So, today I'm going to talk about a few reasons why a land will call to us. Now, I speak to many people who are drawn to certain travel experiences, and almost all of them talk themselves out of it for one reason or another. So, I'm not here to convince you to travel, but I do hope that I can open your mind to what travel can do for you so you stop talking yourself out of going. Okay, the first reason a land might call to you is for soul retrieval. Now, right off the bat, I want to talk about soul retrieval a little bit more deeply than I have mentioned previously. So, soul retrieval is not just about what happened on an individual level. We talked about soul retrieval, like bringing in parts of the self and childhood parts, and those of us that have been like witness to a traumatic event or victim of a traumatic event. This is not always the case when travel is involved. Soul retrieval can be from past lives, from your bloodline, your ancestors, your spiritual ancestors, as well as collective level stuff. So, a lot of people that I work with, myself included, are working on collective level healing, which is a totally different ball game and one that I feel like a lot of teachers don't really talk about because it is hard to put into words and it's actually not that common. So, when we do soul retrieval through travel, when a land is calling us, it can actually be attached to any of those things or all of those things. Soul retrieval is probably one of the least linear processes in shamanic work. So, when we get soul retrieval done during a travel experience, sometimes we don't even know that we've received it. Sometimes it's like whispers in a dream, or just like a sense, or sometimes it's really profound, like feeling like you've come home and it's so familiar. And a lot of us will actually take that and use it as a launching point to move to that location that we're traveling to. But I actually want to encourage you to pause and feel what's going on inside of you if that should happen, because a lot of times it's not a call to relocate, it's a call to remember, it's a call to pick something up. I personally find that I have actually received soul retrieval on every single travel experience that I've had, and they've all been vastly different. And some were extremely hard to recognize. So, like when I was in South Africa, it was this really, really primal, thousands and thousands of years. I don't even know if it was a physical ancestor or a spiritual ancestor, but it was very tribal, like old medicine Sangoma soul retrieval. Um, I've never experienced primal energy before, like what I experienced in Africa. Or in Ireland, it was a piece of my heart. It was a piece of me that had been grieving. And then it was connected to women on the land and other people who'd been grieving, and something that's happening for collective women right now. I mean, it's such a big and intertwined experience, but it has happened literally on every single one of my travels. It's so cool. Now, with soul retrieval, you have to do the same kind of aftercare and integration care that you would with a regular soul retrieval, like if you went to go work with a shaman and had soul retrieval done. So, it's kind of an important thing to keep in mind, because that means like honoring the parts of yourself who have returned, honoring the parts of yourself that died or that were leading the experience up until this moment. Sometimes it means intentional ancestral healing. Sometimes it means you need to go out into the world and work with other people who are going through the same process, or who have gone through the same process, or who are about to, in order to fully integrate. So, integration is a huge part of travel. And also, one of those things I don't think a lot of people talk about is when we travel shamanically or spiritually, and I'm not talking about a retreat, I'm talking about a lived experience of like pilgrimage, not even in the traditional sense of the word pilgrimage. It takes a long time for it to make its way into our body and soul fully. And integration is a process that really needs to be done intentionally, which I kind of talked about in my last podcast. The second reason that a land calls to us is for ancestral healing. So many, if not all of us, have a fair amount of ancestral healing that needs to be done around the witch wound. That is present in pretty much all lineages. It's actually a really interesting topic to discuss, especially around America, because so many of us have come here, like our family came here in the last couple hundred years. We're cut off from our original ancestral line, and everyone's always trying to go back there, but actually that's not what's being asked for us of us. What's being asked of us is to birth something new, to be something new. But that doesn't mean that we don't have some healing work to do around the ancestral lines. There was a lot of persecution of magical people all over the world, and in some places there still is. So, ancestral healing is like the experience of the ancestors that came before us who were persecuted for practicing some kind of magic. And this is a common thing to be healed during travel experiences, especially if you're a healer. And I know a lot of people who listen to the podcast are. And it reverberates not only through your bloodline, but through the collective. So you're healing something that sits deep in your family tree, and that has profound and ongoing positive impacts on your life, your children's lives, your parents. But everything is connected. So everything you do for yourself, you're doing for the whole, and it gets reflected as such. Now, the witch wound is the most common one, and I find that to be like the most loud on a collective level right now. But there is a lot of massive collective woundings that are connected to all of us ancestrally around women, around violence, around force, control, religion, that sort of thing. So, those types of healings are typically what we're going to be called to heal during travel experiences. But of course, we will also have those quote unquote like smaller healings as well. I find that when you compare those, like the healing of my grandmother compared to the collective healing of the bloodlines, it's a very different vibration and it's a very different experience. So, leaning into the subtlety of that can be really interesting and really fruitful. Now, the third reason why a land may call to us is because there are beings, plants, or land spirits that have healing for us. I haven't talked about this too much on the podcast, but this is like I probably have the deepest knowledge around this right now. Every piece of land has unique medicine to offer us. Each location has history, specific events, people who have dwelled on the land, migration efforts, specific plants, animals, and things that roamed long before humans in this world and the other world. And if there was ever those two worlds together, that world. And to take that a step deeper, we also want to consider like the climate, the buildings that were constructed, social organizations, customs, traditions, and everything else that you can possibly imagine leaves its signature on a piece of land. So we're not just talking about the trauma of a land, which is a huge thing that I deal with, or portals that have opened, or the beautiful things that happen on the land. We're talking about the day-to-day stuff, the history. Everything that happens has an energetic vibration that the land holds on to. That's cool, right? Like if you think about how significant that is and what that means, whew, it's a mind blower. And so each specific property is like a fingerprint, and no two fingerprints are alike, right? So even if you go to Italy, your vibrational experience in Rome is going to be very different from Naples. It's going to be very different from somewhere in Tuscany because of all of those things that I mentioned. Now, not to mention the beings that occupy specific properties or specific regions. So we have beings that are like roaming different properties, right? So some of the Fae, the Watchers, the people of the rocks or the trees, those are all beings that roam land. Bigfoot, Sasquatch, they roam and they do their thing. I'm not going to go too deep into those beings right now. That's not what we're talking about. Now, even if you're not interacting with them, when you go on a piece of property that they occupy, you're being attuned, you're being worked on, you are interacting with them, even if you don't know it. Now, that also goes for plants. So every single plant on this planet has a spirit, and they're all very different. You have like relatively small, simple ones and very complex master plants. And a lot of that has to do with human history, and a lot of it has to do with how they interact with humans. Like, are they here to help heal us? Are they here to help heal the air or to feed this particular animal? And so on and so forth. So, every land that you go to that has different plants, you're also interacting with those spirits, whether or not you're aware. Now, imagine all of this done on purpose or consciously. If you are walking the shamanic path or you do some kind of shamanic travel with somebody like me, learning how to tap in, tune in, and actually make the most out of this experience instead of having it just kind of be a byproduct, having healing kind of be a byproduct. So these beings can call you the plants, the trees, or the actual land. And they all have very distinct ways of communicating, very distinct vibrations, and they do work together, right? So for me personally, it's the physical land that calls me the most and the loudest, like loud, like megaphone in my dreams, kind of loud. But I have no idea until one day I'm just like, oh, I feel this deep desire to go to this place. I don't even really know why, except sometimes it's like cool on the outside, right? Like Italy's cool or Hawaii. But most of the time, I don't know why. I just know that I need to put my feet on the ground. That's another thing that gets looked over a lot in spiritual community is like, oh, we can do everything remotely and nothing is not connected, like everything's one, and in the quantum field, yada, yada, yada. There's actually a lot that we have to do in person with our feet on the ground. A lot. And yeah, it's just a whole different level, especially if we want more grounded spiritual work, which is definitely what we need more of. When the trees call us, they usually call us through other trees. So there's like a connection network there. The plants are whispers. So you have to, for most people, they're whispers. So you have to really be tuned into the subtler energies, doing, a bit of meditation, some time in silence. You have to be tuned into those quieter vibrations, and the plants will call you. In terms of beings, a lot of times I don't even know that a being is calling me until I get to their dwelling and I'm like, oh, okay, that was what this felt like, or that's what this meant in my dream, or this is what I was picking up on. They don't come and communicate with me directly because they feel very land bound, if that makes sense. The fourth reason why a piece of land may call you is because you need to be a witness. So sometimes we're invited to a place to unravel a story. This is a history that may be present and is looking for somebody to put the pieces together because part of it has been hidden or obscured or misrepresented. This is common in cities and places where religion has had profound impact, or there's been like a lot of war and takeover and turmoil, or like decimation of a group of people or animals or plants. The land is often calling for someone to come and be witness and observe what has happened through time and space in this particular place. Now, as I've mentioned previously, it's important to remember that things can only be healed when someone can set their eyes upon it and say, I see you. So we talk about this a lot in shadow work, but it qualifies here as well. So let me give you an example. So if you're called to a specific place in the city and like a church, this happens a lot in churches, and you read the history, the documentation of this event that happened, and you're like, ooh, this like doesn't feel right in my body, or this doesn't feel like the vibration of truth, or something like that. You know that it's not true. You have to trust your instinct. You have to trust your intuition. And I'm not telling you from like a intellectual standpoint, like I hate Catholicism, it's wrong, blah, blah, blah. I'm talking about a feeling. So this can happen in like villages, with certain cultures. Like you'll go to a cultural center and they'll try to tell you a story and you'll be like, I feel like there's something missing here. You're being asked to witness the pieces that are missing, witness the pieces that have been lied about. And sometimes that means you get to go on a fun, like, Da Vinci Code hunt for information. And that's totally what we did in Rome. I can't wait to share about it with you guys. So, if there needs to be someone to witness a piece of history that's in hiding, you will be called to go to a place. And that's such a special calling because there's so much that's hidden and obscured that's waiting for somebody to reveal the truth. This is also one of those things where you might feel a little crazy if it comes up. Don't. It's totally normal. The fifth reason why a piece of land might call you is attunement. So this goes hand in hand with the specific signature of each piece of land. If you can imagine that every single circumstance and everything ever created has a specific frequency, which it does, the more frequencies you can be attuned to, the more dimensions slash doorways slash healing slash abilities you can have access to. So, this is actually a huge thing when it comes to plant medicine work. And unfortunately, plant medicine work isn't super easy to digest and integrate. And it's being abused and it's like destroying the collective energy of plant medicine. Par- um like the pool of plant medicine. It's really interesting. But this is one of the reasons why sitting in a plant medicine ceremony is so significant, is because it opens up dimensions and doorways for people. It opens up lines of energies and gives you the opportunity to be attuned. Now, as that access point becomes more tainted, I'm finding that travel is actually an even better access point. Like you get so much more from that experience and it's so much easier to integrate and you get to travel, which is so much fun. So if you need to be attuned to a specific energy, let's say, let me give you an example. Okay, so like you're asking the universe, the God, for partnership. You're like, I really want my person. I want somebody who can see me and who can meet me and is like a best friend and a soulmate. Amazing. The universe is going to bring you the opportunity to resolve whatever stands in the way of you having that relationship. So, right, if we were aligned for that with that relationship, it would be here already. Plain and simple. It's very simple. Now, if it's not here already, we will get the message of what we need to do next to bring it closer to us or bring us closer to it. So you might be called to go to this place and it's been calling you for 5 years and you're like, yeah, whatever, I'll get to it. It's expensive. Whatever excuse you're giving not to go to the place, that's God, like all along saying, hey, your person lives here. Or hey, you're going to have this experience that's going to set you on this path. And then you're going to meet your person. The universe is always conspiring to help you and to give you the things that you ask for, but it is your job to answer the call. It is your job to get out of the way. Now, the interesting thing about travel for healing is that oftentimes we don't know what was healed or how it was healed until months after the travel experience. For me, I frequently have physical healings that are spontaneous, and I actually forget that they were even an issue before I traveled, only being reminded when I, like, read an old journal and recall the struggle that I had, and I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I totally forgot." And it gets healed, and that's part of the human amnesia thing of the spiritual work. Sometimes my perspective on literally the entire world shifts so drastically that I encounter, like, the same I encounter that in a realization months later upon talking to a person that I haven't seen in a few months, or visiting a once familiar location, or again, reading an old journal entry. I love journaling. It's so important for keeping track of these types of things. And then I'm like, oh my God, I totally forgot that I had that perspective on this thing. It's really, really cool. And I have yet to find anything that provides healing in the magnitude that travel does. And as we'll talk about in the upcoming podcast with Rebecca, I think a lot of that has to do with my work and me and the depth in which I operate, that I allow people or allow myself to go to places and experience like multiple timelines and multiple dimensions and the past, the future, the present. And it becomes this like entire healing experience. So travel is hands on, hands down, like the best healing experience for me. And one of the most magical kinds of healing that I embark on and facilitate. It's never quite as like in your face as, let's say, plant medicine or even coaching or therapy, but it's way more mysterious and subtle in these epically profound ways. Now, I'm sure there are many other things I could write down for why land calls to you or why you're called to go to a place specifically for healing, but I'm going to stop here today because I really could go on about this forever. Stay tuned the next couple weeks for that podcast about our experience in Rome. And I think I'm going to have an announcement about the next travel experience that we're going to be launching for 2026. So, Thank you for joining me today. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. If you enjoyed this podcast and want to know more about me and my work, you can find me at www.sacredheartshaman.com.